Are you attracted to slimy things? Do you like mystery? Well, believe it or not, if you're attracted to either one, today's book talk is for you. Hi there, I'm Library Lynn, and I make knowing great nonfiction books my mission. Don't know what to read next? I always have books to recommend. Just to be clear, I do tend to be a backlist reader with an occasional newish book thrown in. But before we get into today's review, I would like to thank Priscilla at Evening Reader for her BookTube newbie shout out. I was surprised and pleased that she included me in her list. I'll link Priscilla's channel below. She's so much fun to watch. I encourage you to give her a try if you haven't already. And if you're a subscriber to my channel, I'd like to give you a big thank you. You have no idea how much it means to me. Now on to the review. Today we're going to talk about The Book of Eels, our enduring fascination with the most mysterious creature in the natural world, by Patrik Svensson. We'll cover the three main things I learned from the book, and I'll let you know what I liked least and what I liked best about it. And stay tuned to the end for the #1 life lesson I got from the book. According to the book's dust jacket, Patrik Svensson is an arts and culture journalist for a newspaper that's in Sweden. I can't pronounce the name, but it's right there. According to his website, he's also a scholar, a writer, a curator, and an entrepreneur. And after reading his book, I feel like he can do pretty much anything he wants to do. The three main things I learned from this book. #1, eels are surprisingly fascinating. I don't like slimy things, so I've always kind of been put off by eels, and I didn't expect to like this book. I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. I had heard a lot of good things about it. Svensson stresses the mysteriousness of these creatures, and I expected that to be just a technique to arouse interest in the book. I figured it would turn out to be much ado about nothing. After all, haven't we solved most of the mysteries in the animal kingdom already? Well, it turns out, no, we haven't. While in the past century, we've solved some of the mysteries surrounding these creatures, some of their reproductive habits baffle us still. Now, I didn't grow up eating eel. In fact, I've never tried it. Apparently, it was a common food source in the West for centuries, but it suddenly fell from favor in America sometime around the mid-20th century and has gradually been declining in favor in Europe. But Svensson, though he's not a fan of the food, of the meat, was brought up with eels as a regular offering on his dinner table. He can fill you in on what it's like. The second thing I learned from the book. Eels have baffled our best minds for thousands of years. Svensson recalls what people have thought about the science and the cold hard facts about eels for over a millennia. He tells how Aristotle, based on his own observations, believed that they spontaneously generated in the mud. No sex involved. Then there was a big scientific race to find their reproductive organs in the more recent Enlightenment period. To help solve that in the 19th century, Sigmund Freud, of all people, set out to find the male reproductive organs, and the experience was so defeating that Svensson points out it likely influenced psychoanalytic thought as we know it today. He tells how the Japanese have tried to raise the Pacific eel in captivity to meet the voracious Japanese appetite for the fish. Despite the money, resources, and scientific know-how, their efforts to reproduce eels in captivity on a mass scale has been a dismal failure. The boogers just won't cooperate in any meaningful way. And while American and European eels almost certainly breed in the Sargasso Sea, which is interesting on it. Let's just stop right there and talk about the Sargasso Sea for a minute. If you're not familiar with that sea, it's the only one in the world that has no land on any of its borders. It's in the Atlantic Ocean, and it's surrounded on four sides by currents, so its location is never completely stable. But back to the connection with eels. Even though they're positive this is where eels, the American and European eels, breed, there's never been an adult eel either found there alive or dead. The willow leaves that Svensson refers to in this passage are the recently hatched eels. They found many of those there, and that's how they know that this is where the eels are originating. When Dad talked about the Sargasso Sea, it sounded like a magical fairy tale world, or like the end of the world. I pictured mile after mile of open sea that suddenly turned into a blanket of seaweed teeming with life and movement, and eels writhing around one another and dying and sinking to the ocean floor, while tiny see-through willow leaves floated up toward the light and let the invisible current take them. Every time we caught an eel, I looked into its eyes. trying to catch a glimpse of what it had seen. None of them ever met my gaze. The third thing I learned from the book, well, actually, I didn't learn this from the book, but this is what I got from the book. Just like eels, life is baffling and mysterious. Svensson spends a lot of time talking about the times he and his dad spent together catching eels to eat. Capturing a live creature to kill and prepare and consume is never pretty, and Svensson doesn't sugarcoat the process. It's pretty gruesome. But like the relationship between Svensson and his father, it's central to the book. Death is part of life. We all need to eat. And while he doesn't spend a lot of time lamenting the lost lives of these creatures, he does spend a lot of time speculating on death in general. After all, living things are born and die. It's part of a cycle. Svensson gets this across in such a poetic manner that I was completely choked up by the end of the book. What I liked least about this book, I'm a squeamish person. And some of his descriptions of how these eels are handled made me writhe, if not physically, then definitely emotionally. But I must admit, I was also fascinated. What I liked best about the book, in some ways, this book is like a long prose poem. The reoccurring theme is death and resurrection. The eels often seem to be dead, definitely dead. No way they could survive the conditions in which they're kept. There are legends, possibly actually true, some of them living for a century, maybe more, in unnatural circumstances. He tells documented cases of some of these. It's incredible. In this passage, he's talking about a time when he decided to keep a small eel that he and his dad had caught in an aquarium in his room. The eel refused to eat and just lay there underneath increasingly filthy water. And finally, his dad came in and said it was dead. So I'm going to read you what happened when he took it out to release it back to the stream. That night, we returned to the stream, and I carried the bucket down to the bank from the car by the willow tree. I put it down and picked up the eel. It felt cold and lifeless. I lowered my hand into the water and released it. At first, we were both motionless. Then the eel moved. Its body undulated slowly from side to side. With gentle motions, it swam down into the dark and disappeared. The final lesson I got from the book, we think we understand the world. We think science has everything all wrapped up neatly for us. Svensson himself believes that everything in the world can be explained by scientific principles. And yet, we may never understand everything. We may not be meant to. Perhaps not understanding things and searching for the answers gives us a reason to live. Other books by this author. This book has been, I think, re-released with the title, The Gospel of the Eels, A Father, a Son, and the World's Most Enigmatic Fish. So that's my review of The Book of Eels by Patrik Svensson. Do you agree or disagree with my points? Did I leave something out? Is there other nature writing books that you've particularly enjoyed? If so, leave a comment below. For more worthwhile nonfiction books to read, hit like and subscribe so you'll always have fresh ideas. And if you would like great books like this at your fingertips, check out my book, Library Lynn's curated collection of superlative nonfiction. Here you'll find an entire library's worth of recommended books on every topic arranged in Dewey Decimal classification, just like in a public library. You'll find links to the Book of Eels and my book in the description box below. If you use my link, I'll get a small commission, which I would really appreciate. Sign up for my email list to get my top 10 recommendations on book topics like Indigenous people, the environment, and other topics once a month in your inbox. And finally, share this video with your book-loving family and friends. Until next time, happy reading.